Iran is in all the headlines. Conflicts, threats, hidden alliances, nuclear ambitions. But what few know is that its story is already written in the Bible, its origin and also its end. Yes, Iran appears in the Bible from Genesis to the end-time prophecies, but it does so under its ancient name, Persia. Because the Bible not only recounts the creation of Iran, it also prophesies its final destiny in one of the most obscure and feared passages of Revelation, the war of Gog and Magog, a coalition that will rise against Israel in the last days. But before becoming a prophetic enemy, Persia was the empire chosen by God to free his people, rebuild the temple, and fulfill Daniel's prophecies. Stay with us until the end, because today you will discover something that very few dare to teach: the true role of Iran in God's plan, from beginning to end. Are you ready to discover how a nation that today defies the world is fulfilling exactly what was written over 2,500 years ago? Then let's begin. It all begins in the book of Genesis. After the flood, God gives humanity a new beginning and reveals how the nation of Persia was born. Noah and his family were the only survivors on earth, and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the new fathers of nations. In chapter 10, we find the first map of the nations of the earth. We read, "These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. From these, the nations spread out across the coasts, each according to their language, their families, and their nations." This is the genealogical map of Noah's sons. Here are revealed the 2 patriarchs from whom the Persian Empire would be born, Madai and Elam. Madai was the son of Japheth, and from him came the Medes, a people who lived in the northern mountains of what is now part of Iran. From the mountains of northern Iran, Madai's descendants began to expand, founding villages, clans, and tribes. They were independent, rugged mountain dwellers, known for their endurance and tribal organization. Madai is the direct ancestor of the northern heart of ancient Iran. The second name is Elam, son of Shem. His descendants, the Elamites, settled in the southwest of Iran, in the fertile lands near the Persian Gulf. But in Genesis 14, we read of the first great international war in the Bible. 4 kings from the east, including Chedorlaomer, king of the Elamites, allied to invade Canaan. They plundered cities, enslaved people, and took Lot, Abraham's nephew, as a prisoner. Elam was not an insignificant tribe, it was a power. And according to the Bible, it was the first nation to attack the people of faith. But Abraham did not sit idly by. With only 318 trained servants, he pursued the invaders and defeated them at night. He rescued Lot, freed the captives, and humiliated the kings of the east. It was an impossible victory, one that defied human logic and sent a clear message: no power from the east can prevail against those who have gods. The people of Elam did not disappear. Centuries passed, generations were born and died, and those tribes once defeated by Abraham grew in number. The Elamites and the Medes shared the same land of eastern Mesopotamia, Elam in the fertile plains of the southwest, and the Medes in the harsh northern mountains which forged their character. While empires rose and fell, a new force was silently forming. First came clans, then kingdoms, and finally an empire, the Persian Empire. Though these were pagan nations, they were not outside God's plan. The prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah spoke 2 major prophecies about them. The first, through Isaiah, said that God would use Elam and Media as instruments to punish Babylon. The empire that had destroyed Jerusalem and burned the temple would not go unpunished. And God had already chosen who would judge it, the union of the peoples of Iran. But the second prophecy was even more surprising. God would not only use Persia to punish, he would use it to redeem. Through the prophet Isaiah, God announced that a pagan king of Persia, not yet born, would be his instrument to free the people of Israel from exile and order the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Isaiah even called him by name more than 150 years before his birth. Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus. This is one of the most specific and astonishing prophecies in the entire Bible. God not only predicted that he would use a Persian king, but gave his exact name a century and a half in advance, and both prophecies were fulfilled with chilling precision. In the 6th century BC, the first king of the Medes, Dioces, unified the tribes of Elam and Madai, founding the first imperial capital on Iranian territory, Ecbatana. His grandson, Cyrus, took the next major step. He reformed the army and turned it into a war machine to destroy Nineveh, the capital of the brutal Assyrian Empire. The prophecy began to be fulfilled. God was raising up Persia from within as an instrument of judgment and redemption. But in the midst of that darkness, God chose him. While surrounded by the corruption of the royal palace, Daniel remained faithful, and for that faithfulness, God gave him something he had given no other captive: the gift of visions. Visions not only of his time, but of the course of all history. From the heart of the empire that had destroyed Jerusalem, Daniel began to see how God would raise up another empire, one that would replace Babylon and play a crucial role in the destiny of his people, the Empire of Persia. 5 prompts d'imagem ultra-realistic, and it was all announced in dreams. While Daniel served in Nebuchadnezzar's court, the king was disturbed by a terrifying dream. A gigantic statue made of different metals stood before him, majestic and threatening. The king demanded that someone not only interpret the dream, but reveal it without having heard it. No wise man in Babylon could do it, but God had prepared his prophet. Daniel was brought before the king and, with divine authority, described the dream with precision and declared a revelation that would change the destiny of the world. You, O king, are the head of gold. But after you will arise another kingdom, inferior to yours, represented by the chest and arms of silver. This silver figure was not one nation, but 2 arms, 2 powers united in one body. The Medes and the Persians, united but not equal, because the Persian arm would rise stronger and take control. The prophecy was clear. Babylon would fall, and the throne would pass to a new empire chosen by God. But God gave Daniel another vision of Persia, one even more overwhelming. In this vision, 4 monstrous beasts rose from the chaotic waters. The second was a giant bear, raised on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth, and a thunderous voice said, "Arise, devour much flesh." The bear represented the empire that would come after Babylon, Media and Persia, but it was raised on one side because Persia would dominate over Media. The 3 ribs were its 3 major conquests: Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt, one by one devoured in its unstoppable expansion. This vision was fulfilled with stunning accuracy. Cyrus, the young Persian king, conquered Media, united the kingdoms, forming the Medo-Persian Empire, and gradually became the greatest power of his time, until he finally set his sights on Babylon. The prophesied day came, but it was not a war like the others. One night, King Belshazzar, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, held a great banquet with 1,000 nobles, and in an act of arrogance ordered the sacred vessels stolen from the temple in Jerusalem to be brought so they could toast the false gods. Suddenly, an invisible hand wrote 4 words on the palace wall: Mene, Tekel, Parsin. The king turned pale. No one understood their meaning until they called Daniel, who revealed, "God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Your kingdom has been given to the Medes and Persians." And even as these words were spoken, the prophecy was being fulfilled. Cyrus's army had diverted the Euphrates River and entered silently through the dry riverbed. The gates were left open. God himself had opened them. That very night, Belshazzar was killed, and the prophecy was fulfilled. Babylon fell before Persia. The Jews, who had wept for 70 years by the rivers of Babylon, saw the impossible come to pass. A foreign pagan king decreed their return to Jerusalem. But Cyrus did not merely allow their return. He financed the rebuilding of the temple and sent the leaders of the people with royal support. Zerubbabel, a descendant of David's line, and Joshua the high priest would be the first to lay the foundations. And finally, the place where God's name dwelt would rise again. Thus, Persia became the only nation that did not destroy Israel, but restored it, exactly as God had prophesied through Isaiah 150 years earlier. After Daniel's visions, Persia continued to grow in power. Under King Xerxes, the throne of the greatest empire on earth was established in the majestic city of Susa, in the heart of Elam, what is today southwest Iran. It was in Susa that one of the most unexpected miracles in all biblical history took place. The great empire would be conquered by one woman. King Xerxes held a magnificent 6-month feast and then invited all the inhabitants of Susa to a final 7-day banquet. In a moment of pride and revelry, he summoned his wife, Queen Vashti, to display her beauty. But Vashti refused. Humiliated before the entire empire, the king banished her. His advisors proposed a radical solution: search among the virgins of the kingdom for a new queen. The most beautiful would be brought to the palace, prepared for a year, and then presented to the king. One of these young women was Hadassah, but no one knew her by that name. She was an orphan born among the exiled Jews. Her cousin Mordecai had raised her in secret, and in the palace she was given another name, Esther. She was chosen by the king, and without knowing she was Jewish, Xerxes crowned her queen of Persia. Meanwhile, a deadly enemy rose in the shadows of the palace: Haman, a descendant of the Amalekites, ancient enemies of Israel. He rose to the highest position after the king. When all were to bow before him, Mordecai refused. Arrogant and vengeful, Haman sought not only revenge on Mordecai, but to exterminate all his people. What began as a personal vendetta turned into genocide. Haman convinced the king that there was a strange people spread across the kingdom, with different laws, who disobeyed the empire's decrees. He proposed their extermination and sealed the decree of death with the king's ring. In less than a year, every Jew in Persia was to die, men, women, and children. Chaos spread among the Jews, and Mordecai sent an urgent message to Esther. When Esther learned of the decree, she didn't know what to do to save her people. She had to appear before the king uninvited, a mortal risk. Anyone who entered the king's chamber without being summoned could be executed instantly unless the king extended his scepter as a sign of mercy. Finally, Esther decided to risk her life. If I perish, I perish. She appeared uninvited before the king, but God gave her favor. The scepter was extended. After Esther's miracle in Susa, Persia seemed to fade from the biblical spotlight. Centuries passed, empires changed, and Rome took the throne of power. But Persia's silence did not mean its absence. Because centuries later, when the world waited in silence for the coming of the Messiah, Persia appeared again. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read a passage often repeated, but rarely understood in depth. Wise men came from the east to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." Who were these wise men? Why did they travel so far for a sign? The Greek word magoi refers to wise men, astronomers, and priests from the east. Although the text does not mention their nationality directly, everything suggests they came from the ancient lands of the Medo-Persian Empire, what is now Iran. The Magi were part of a highly influential religious caste in Persia, known for their knowledge of the stars, ancient scriptures, and inherited prophecies. It is very likely that among the scrolls they studied were the writings of the prophet Daniel, who had served in the courts of Babylon and Persia centuries earlier. Daniel not only interpreted dreams, but also prophesied the coming of the Messiah with mathematical precision. In Daniel 9 we read, "From the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens." If these wise men knew Daniel's visions, they likely knew the Messiah's time was near. When they saw the star, they understood. The promised son had been born. But the story of Iran in the Bible does not end in Bethlehem. Persia, though once an instrument of redemption, will also be part of one of the darkest prophetic episodes of the future. God not only revealed Persia's beginning, he also announced its end through the prophet Ezekiel in one of the most feared visions of the Old Testament, the war of Gog and Magog. In chapter 38, Ezekiel describes a coalition of nations that in the last days will rise against restored Israel. Son of man, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, "This is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, Gog. Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them." Persia, the ancient Iran, is one of the first nations mentioned. The same nation that once helped rebuild the temple will now be part of a military alliance against God's people. Who are the other allies? Gog, prince of Magog, identified by many scholars as a leader from the far north, often associated with Russia or a Eurasian coalition. Cush, ancient Nubia, possibly modern Sudan. Put, possibly Libya. Gomer and Togarmah, regions near modern-day Turkey and the Caucasus. Together, they form an international force that, according to Ezekiel, will descend like a storm against Israel. You will come like a storm, covering the land, you and all your troops and many nations with you. But they will not succeed. This attack will provoke God's direct intervention, and his judgment will be severe. Earthquakes, fire, confusion among the troops. God's glory will be revealed amid the chaos. I will be magnified and sanctified and known in the eyes of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. The text describes a devastating scene. The army that rises against Israel will be destroyed by fire from heaven. Corpses will cover the fields. Weapons will burn for 7 years. And the name of Gog will forever be associated with divine judgment. Persia, as part of this coalition, will not escape punishment. The same nation that was once a redeemer will become a prophetic adversary, not because God forgot it, but because once again it will rise against his will and his people. Will Persia be destroyed forever? Will it have another chance at redemption? The answer lies hidden between the lines and is more complex and more powerful.